Hey Faith, it's Dr. Scott. I have some feedback for you on your visual analysis draft. Just a quick reminder of what I'm looking for in this assignment. I'm looking for a thesis statement that's focused, that's clear, makes an argument about two flood wall murals, and it has strong supporting reasons. And when I think of supporting reasons, I think of the body paragraphs. Like they do a good job of supporting the paper's overall argument. I'm also looking for supporting details from the murals themselves, as well as the reading on Scioto Historical or the documentary, that you're using those details to support your argument, and then you're also kind of explaining how those details support your argument. Also looking for organization and transitions. Did you kind of sequence the paragraphs in a way that was purposeful, and did you use transitions between body paragraphs and between ideas within your paragraphs? Also looking for integration of a couple paraphrases and MLA formatting, a visual, and a paragraph without any B verbs. I think for where you're at with your essay, I want to talk a little bit about supporting details and also about how you're organizing things. I actually think that the thesis statement that you have makes quite a bit of sense. So, utilizing color, people, in the setting, Dafford manages to show how resilient Portsmouth is and how much pride the townspeople should have for their strength. I felt like that was the thesis statement. I guess you could also make the argument that this was also part of the thesis, but I kind of think that right there is, that for me it's clear, it's succinct, this is what the paper's trying to do, and I'm fine with that. What kind of breaks down for me in the essay is when we get to the body paragraphs. There are places where there's a clear connection between the body paragraph and this thesis statement, and then there are places where I'm not sure how the paragraph fits with this thesis statement. I'll also say that there are places in your essay where I think it's really rare for somebody to pull off the organization with, I'm going to talk about one mural here, and then I'm going to talk about the other mural in another paragraph. You might be able to pull that off. Most people, when they do that, they end up summarizing something that they see in the murals, and they never get to that point where they're actually kind of analyzing. It's just kind of summary. You don't do that throughout the essay, but there are places where I think that the organization has kind of kept you from kind of doing what you need to do in this essay, which is analyze the murals and to think about how they get their message across. There's places in your essay where you're kind of talking about the murals, but you're not really kind of talking about the murals in the sense that they're helping you with an analysis. And I'll point to that here in just a little bit. So in the first body paragraph, like, I kind of love this paragraph. This is the paragraph that tells me, okay, I think Faith is going to be just fine with this assignment, because you have some really great detail, and then you're kind of discussing that detail and connecting it back to the paper's overall argument. So I see, like, great detail here, and then you've got both murals in the paragraph, and then you give us some detail, and then you kind of explain what it means, and you connect it to the paper's overall argument. I think you might do a better job in places of being more specific about, like in here, I think you might be a little bit more specific. Take us to specific places in the 1937 flood mural where it's very clear that there's some kind of sadness or melancholy or what have you, with just the use of colors. I think that you could do that. You kind of tell us here and you don't show us, but there are other places in the essay where you do a great job of kind of showing us the colors that are being used in the murals and then kind of discussing them. So this paragraph, like, I'm actually really pleased with. Like, I think it's really strong. Where after this paragraph, though, I start to lose that sense of how ideas are connected to the paper's overall point. So in this paragraph, we have the progress of education mural, and you kind of just stay on that mural. And I don't see a lot of conversation about that resilience idea. Like, it's kind of gone away. We have a lot of description of the mural, but I'm having a hard time kind of understanding how all of this is resilience. think you're making an attempt here at the end, but for me, it's hard to understand how this is connected to a paper's overall argument, and it's really hard to understand when the previous paragraph does such a good job of demonstrating how color is used to how it's used to get across that idea of resilience or stubbornness or toughness. I think what you have, yeah, resilient. You also mentioned pride in the thesis statement, which makes me think that, like, is that really what you're kind of writing about? You hint at it in places, and I'm just wondering if it's something that you should either cut or you should maybe develop and make sure that you're, making sure that you're talking about throughout your essay. So that issue, like connecting the paragraph to the paper's overall thesis statement, that is something that, besides that first body paragraph, I think that's important to think about for the rest of the essay. I also think it's important that within your body paragraphs, here you have, like, you're talking about progress of education. There are 3 panels, first panel, second panel, talking about the buildings and all that, talking about how it goes throughout time. I think there needs to be some discussion, like there needs to be some kind of connection to the paper's argument within the body paragraph. So not just like at the end of a body paragraph, but like here, there needs to be this idea gets at Portsmouth's resilience and ability to stand the test of time, and you would keep kind of explaining and discussing that. So it's not something that you should arrive at in the paragraphs. It's something that you should kind of announce at the beginning of a paragraph and then spend the rest of the paragraph using details and then explaining how those details help prove your point. So that, I think those 2 issues, making sure that the paragraphs are connected to, they have a clear connection back to the paper's overall argument, and then within the paragraphs, making sure that your details have a connection to the paragraph's main point, that is the issue in most of the paragraphs that come after that first body paragraph. And that's not to say that everything kind of needs to get scrapped, but there needs to be some kind of discussion. I think it's something you need to consider with each of the body paragraphs. Also noticing that the paragraphs are quite long, and I'm not mad at long paragraphs, actually. I think that that's a good thing. Like, it shows that you can have a sustained conversation. There are places, though, where where you start off a paragraph talking about one item, and then you end up talking about another. So this paragraph here that I think is about setting. Yeah, so it's talking about the different settings in the painting. So it's taken me a while to kind of figure out where I'm at in the paragraph, which that's kind of a smaller issue. But towards the end of that paragraph, I get down here, and I guess you're kind of still talking about setting, but it's not kind of clear to me. Like in a sentence like that, it's like, how's this related to setting? How is this related to setting? Like, I guess it might be, but you're asking me to do a lot of work to kind of make the connections that I think you should be making in your writing. So I'm actually really happy to see this draft. Like, it's a solid draft. I think that there's definitely work that needs to be done, and most of the work is going to come in cutting, figuring out what it is that you need to cut. You've got an essay that I think is twice as long as it needs to be. Yeah. So that's a good position to be in, to be able to cut things. So, quick formatting thing. Either italicize or underline. You pick one and you stick with it. So, myself, I use italics. So, oops. So you keep maybe the italics or do underline, whatever kind of works for you. Quick recap. Make sure each paragraph supports the paper's overall argument. It wasn't clear to me in some places how a paragraph was helping to support the paper's overall point. Might be an issue where, you get to be choosy because you've written so much. You get to choose, like, what are your best 2 or 3 examples that support the paper's argument about resilience or pride. You choose those, and then you cut the ones that don't work. Explain how details in the paragraph support the paragraph's main point, and connect them to the paper's overall argument. you have this strategy where you give me a lot of detail in a lot of your body paragraphs, and then at the end you're trying to arrive at a discussion of resilience or pride. That discussion of resilience or pride needs to happen throughout that paragraph, and not just something that you arrive at. There's also the other items to consider: organization, integrating a paraphrase, an image, and be verb. A lot of those things are items to think about after you've figured out the paper's overall argument. All right, Faith, it was a great draft. Enjoyed reading it, and I'm looking forward to seeing where the revision goes. Thanks.